Oh, finally, a product for somebody! Arcade1UP. I've already talked about my thoughts on this company in the past, but just as a small little debrief, back when they hit the scene with their like 3/4 sized cabinets, I absolutely loved the concept. You know, they had Street Fighter 2 with 3 versions of that game, Galaga and Galaxian, and like Rampage, and a couple other midway titles. Like, this was such an amazing idea. An arcade cabinet for your home that you don't have to worry about doing maintenance on or getting in the home because they're so damn big. Just $300, you put them together like IKEA furniture, and they give you a comparable arcade experience. Of course, if you want to be a purist about it, it ain't anywhere close, but for most people, I think it did the job and then some. I mean, like, when you're playing it as a casual player, it really does feel like you have an arcade cabinet in your home, and I think they were great at that. And they started doing some amazing things. I mean, like, they were doing some dream deals where they were doing like the Simpsons arcade, X-Men arcade, Ninja Turtles arcade, NBA Jam, NFL Blitz, just all these arcade games that you thought like, okay, it would be awesome if they did that, but the licensing may get in the way. But no, they found a way. They kind of scored most of the major arcade games that people really wanted, that almost seemed like pie in the sky ideas, and it was great. However, as time went on, the arcade cabinets didn't really like improve a whole lot, which would have been fine if they stuck near that $300 price tag. Maybe you could go over a little bit, but that Simpsons arcade cabinet cost like $700, and it had a myriad of issues. Still fine products at the end of the day. It's not like they were shipping trash, but for $700, I mean, like, at that point, you're only a couple hundred away from like just owning the original arcade cabinets. And these days, instead of announcing exciting new properties they're making arcade cabinets for the most part, they're kind of just re-releasing the same junk. Like, we just get non-stop Pac-Man and Galaga variants, new Street Fighter cabinets, all with like different designs or just slightly different cabinet art, maybe a different game, but like, that's it. And it just kind of burns the consumer. I just spent $500 on this Arcade1UP cabinet, and now you announce a brand new version with like a different game and different art, but now Wi-Fi connectivity and a slightly upgraded screen or something. And it costs the same amount, and you announced it like 5 months after you announced the original. What a crock. But outside of their core arcade cabinets, they have done a bunch of other garbage, including this right here. It just kind of feels like Arcade1UP has been just throwing everything at the wall, seeing what sticks. They've been doing all different kinds of arcade cabinets, like the countercades, collectorcades, partycades. You got an at-home photo booth, you got that infinity game table thing, and we also have like a plug and play. The Arcade1UP game console with wireless controller and HDMI connectivity, or Arcade1UP HDMI game console with wireless controller. Hey, either name works. So Arcade1UP really stood apart from the rest of the retro gaming crowd at the time because they were creating at-home arcades. And then they released these, which do not stand apart whatsoever. I don't really see what sets this apart from like any other like at-games flashback console you'd find at a Walgreens. This one right here is a Pac-Man collection. You connect it to the TV with HDMI, and it comes with 10 games. I'm seeing we got Pac-Man, Pac-Mania, New Rally X, Galaga, Galaga 88, Dig Dug, Super Xevious, Rolling Thunder, Dragon Spirit, and Mappy. Solid collection. It really does kind of bring me back to the old school Namco plug and plays. And that's what this really seems to be mimicking here. You just plug it in and you got a mini game console with a couple of arcade games ready to go. But I feel like this just misses the entire point of those old school plug and play arcade sticks. For one, they were actual arcade sticks. I remember, like, I had a couple versions of Pac-Man for game consoles like the Genesis and the Game Boy Advance, and like those sufficed, but like, man, like I really wanted that arcade joystick. Even if it wasn't like ideal, like I really appreciated having that for a game like Pac-Man. It just felt right. And the plug and plays gave you that. And on top of that, they were just really, really easy to just plug and play, as the name suggested. They used batteries. You had to put batteries in and then you turned it on, and all you had to do was plug the yellow and white cables into the TV. And at the time, a lot of TVs just had the yellow, white, and red AV cables on the front of the TV, so it just made it super easy to just say, you know what, I feel like playing some Pac-Man right now, just plug it in, turn it on, boom, you're golden. This right here is using a generic ass game controller. Like, firstly, none of the games in this collection use all 6 of these buttons here. I can already tell that D-pad does not mix well with any of the games right here. This is just a basic ass controller. You know how I know that? Because it's right here too. And none of the Mega Man games here use any more than 2 damn buttons. The plug and plays from back in the day from like Jack's Pacific, they molded brand new controllers for every single one of those games. For these things, it just feels like they just apply a new coat of paint and sticker on both of them and call it a day. And considering how modern TVs are, I just don't really feel like these make any sense. Like I said, the plug and plays from back in the day, those were convenient. You could just plug them in. They used AA batteries, so you know, you didn't have to worry about a power supply. You could just have them wrapped up in just a bin in the corner and just whip them out whenever you want. These require a USB power supply, HDMI port, which are only on the backs of any HD TVs these days, in addition to these controllers being wireless and requiring AAA batteries in of themselves. Now, it does seem like you can just plug this controller directly into the console with USB, but does that really matter? I just feel like no matter what, this console just doesn't really fit into modern day living rooms. TVs only have like 2 HDMI ports. Those things are sparse. Are you really gonna give up one of your precious HDMI ports for this? I'd give up my damn firstborn for a 3rd HDMI port on half these TVs. I'm not giving it up to Pac-Man collection, especially when this is obviously just a cash grab with just such a basic generic ass controller. But I will be fair, I have not opened these yet. These are brand new. The Mega Man collection had a bit of an adventure on its way here, as you can see. But I'm down to give these a try and see just how they stack up when it comes to the quality of the gameplay itself, how the controllers feel, what that micro SD card on the back does. What, do we load these up with more games? Does this work with other ROMs? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I've seen what that does before. Watching like reviews and unboxings of these types of things are kind of my guilty pleasure on YouTube. But these things are a dime a dozen. I've seen loads of devices just like this, specifically from companies like At Games. So to be honest, I completely forget what these things are about, what sets them apart, and I'm about to find out. But first impressions of the controller, ass. This ain't very good. These shoulder buttons are strange. They are very sensitive, like you barely have to press down on them for them to click at all. And they're very loud clicks as well. But at the same time, like, what? These are Namco arcade games. None of them need shoulder buttons. Just a very odd feeling controller. It has these grips right here, which I guess I appreciate, but just how long it is just gives it kind of like this awkward feel. It feels like it needs to be a little like, I don't know, shorter. That's always really annoying to me when controllers like this require a screwdriver to get in. Like, it's just like, I just want to pop it open and just change it real quick. Then the console itself, which is just a super cheap thing right here. I mean, it's fine, it looks tolerable, but you know, like, something that I think was on the verge of getting it was like those At Games blast units. They were pretty much like little Chromecast devices, like little flash drives you plugged into the HDMI port. You still had to power them with a USB cable. I mean, I don't think that's ever gonna change. But those, I think, had a pretty good idea as to like how like a plug and play in the modern day should work. This is kind of assuming you will make space for this on your TV stand, which I think is ridiculous. It's 10 Namco arcade games. You know, I always thought a good way to go about this is just like, hey, a lot of people have smart TVs now, you know, Roku TVs, Amazon Fire TVs, all that. Why not make an app that connects to like a controller you sell like this And that way, casual consumers, if they see like, oh man, I remember Pac-Man, like you buy this controller, you download that app, that way you don't have to plug this hardware in, man. Like, I just feel like that's a step too far for what this is supplying me. Fucking Pac-Man. And then we have the cables here, which they do supply pretty much everything that we need, you know, USB cable and an HDMI cord. That's very nice. And then the instructions. It's pretty damn straightforward. Nothing crazy here. Welp, I'm off to waste the next 30 minutes. It's a sticker. Yeah, this thing is kind of a pile of garbage. I mean, I guess it has its place in like a fucking CVS. This kind of thing is truly meant for people who just, they just see, oh man, it plays Pac-Man, I love Pac-Man. I used to play that game all the time, and they won't notice that the controller sucks ass. They won't notice the emulation is just mediocre. There's so many little things about this thing that just boggle my mind. So first up, the menu system is just bland. Who gives a shit? But on the menu, it says, hold the 1-player button to return to the menu. Hold the 2-player button to reset the game. And you know, I'm kind of looking at the controller and I'm just thinking like, what are they saying? Turns out the select button is the 1-player button and the start button is the 2-player button. There are no goddamn labels on here. And I just find it to be like one of the most unintuitive things out there. Just the fact that, okay, so yeah, I have to hit start to turn on all the games, you know, I have to hit start to enter all of the games, but then I have to hit select because that's the 1-player button to, you know, enter the games, you know, in 1-player mode, and then also hold select to go home. You know what's really stupid about that? The fact that I still have to hold these buttons to go home when there's like 13 million more goddamn buttons than necessary on these controllers that you could have very easily just made like the Z button a home button. But no, I have to hold this button for like 5 damn seconds to go home every single time. And the controller quality itself, I mean, in game, it's fine. It does the job. I can make it work, but it's not ideal whatsoever. I mean, like, this is a pretty cruddy controller. Games themselves, I mean, it's a couple of Namco classics, you know, Pac-Man, Dig Dug, Galaga. Everything else outside of that is kind of like a little like, oh, a little wacky. I mean, yeah, you got Mappy and Pac-Mania, but then you have stuff like Super Xevious, not just Xevious, Super Xevious, which I honestly have never heard of up until this point. From what I played, it's Xevious. Then you have stuff like Rolling Thunder and Dragon Spirit, which are more obscure Namco arcade games. Still cool to have, not my thing though. New Rally X, you know, is a classic. So the games are all there, and it's not a bad collection of Namco arcade classics. The emulation though, just always seems like a bit off. I find that the music and sound effects just seem like pitched a little higher than what I'm used to. And in addition, it feels like there's kind of a filter on screen where the games look like fine, they're clear, but there's just something about it. It's like this kind of weird smoothing filter. Like, I just look at like how Pac-Man looks and how the fruit look in a game of Pac-Man, and it just feels like a couple of pixels are missing. So it feels like there's like a smoothing filter on there, which is weird. But at the end of the day, like, none of this is really like, doesn't really affect anything, especially for like who this console is for. It's something like, I could call this thing a piece of trash because the emulation isn't great. I'm like, who cares? This is made for like uncles who had not played Pac-Man in years. They walk in a Walgreens, oh my god, I remember that, and they buy it. Which makes the Mega Man one a little confusing to me. I kind of feel like a lot of people that grew up with Mega Man kind of are in the know these days. Like, sure, probably a lot of them hadn't played a game since the 80s or 90s, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, I don't know, this just seems like a weird choice for me. I feel like it's just like, they probably have a PS4 Mega Man Legacy Collections on there for way cheaper. And you're not using a horrible controller where the buttons are swapped to what they'd usually be on like the NES. So like Mega Man, you know, you jump with A, you shoot with B, and that's the same case here. But A is here and B is there, which is the exact opposite of an NES controller. So that just kind of stinks. And there's no options on these devices. It's just you turn them on and you select a game and that's it. Now a weird thing about these is that they include the micro SD card slot, which allows you to play ROMs on it. Well, that seems like a weird feature to include. I don't understand why companies like Capcom or Namco are totally fine with, like, you know, releasing a Mega Man or in Pac-Man collection box like this, and then, yeah, you can also load this up with ROMs that you illegally downloaded online. I don't care if you do that, but I think they kinda do. But it doesn't really matter. You load up ROMs on here, this ain't gonna play anything like not 2D. Like anything past basically the Super Nintendo Genesis, maybe GBA, nah. And the emulation is at the same kind of quality as the games on these devices. It's just a little cruddy. Like, the games are playable, it's fine, but like, why are you I don't get it. Because these are for people who don't know any better. Why does this include a micro SD card slot? They're not gonna know to use that. But anybody who knows to use that, you definitely already have a better device to play your ROMs on. So like, this product just befuddles me. I mean, not only do I feel like it's from a bygone era, I just feel like there's not really a place for things like this anymore. But the quality itself here is just like, I mean, it's passable, I guess, but it's just so crummy. It's just the fact that, like, okay, the controller itself is pretty garbage. Again, it works, it does its job, but my lord, this is just a sticker you can immediately peel off. It's not even hard to do such a thing. The button quality, the D-pad, everything just feels so cheap. And then the console itself just has kind of just mediocre emulation. There are games that have been re-released in so many ways, and I feel like if you're in the market to buy a Mega Man collection, that just plugs and plays into your TV, I feel like you might be in the know enough to know that there's like a Mega Man Legacy Collection available on literally like every single platform out right now, and you could probably get it for like less than $20. And then the micro SD card slot just feels like a failed attempt to try and make this thing like, oh wow, don't mind if I do. God, this is just a stupid product. I'm sorry. Like, there's nothing to this other than like, ooh, Mega Man, I like Mega Man. That's kind of cool. You get the first 6 Mega Man games on this device here. But man, I gotta be honest, this thing is kind of not very good. And this just kind of seems like one of the first products Arcade1UP released that kind of showed their lack of direction, kind of just showed that they were just throwing random stuff at the wall to see what stuck. It wasn't really about quality for them. It was more so about just like, hey, let's just try to make a quick buck on retro IPs. And that's not to say that's their company motto or anything, but that's definitely something you start to feel creep up a little more each and every product they reveal. So yes, I do not recommend the Arcade1UP HDMI consoles. I am so sorry. I understand a lot of you had to cancel your weekend plans because of that recommendation. But if I had to pick between the Pac-Man collection and the Mega Man collection, which one would I choose? James Pond.